And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 816. We're back to your team by team previews to get you ready for the 2026 fantasy baseball season. We head to the Pacific Northwest, a team that was oh so close to heading to the big dance this past year. A nice run for the Seattle Mariners. And in order to help me break down Big Dumper and Company in Seattle, you can find his work at Rotoballer, at RotoViz, at Baseball HQ. He's a football and a baseball mastermind. He's been nominated for 3 FSWA awards. He's won 2 of them. You can find him on Twitter at Corbin_Young21. Corbin Young, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, just like we were talking about beforehand, it's just, regular season football ends. And, even though I've got some Seahawks in the, NFL playoffs, it's shifting that brain to more baseball and more baseball. So usually you're the kickoff to me of like, all right, time to get a little more serious.
I love it. Like you get you going here before you know you'll be writing like an Arsenal report or something for HQ and or something, or a Facts and Flukes column or something will be coming out over there. So because I know my assignments for PT tomorrow start this week, so I know they're starting to slowly roll things out, and it's coming. So yeah, looking forward to that. All right. Well, real quick, since you said Seahawks, this is going to come out after the Seahawks Niners game, but I live in a world where there's a bunch of Niners fans. I am not one of them. I told them the Seahawks are going to, do their thing again. They all agree, actually. Let's assume the Seahawks win this game, Corbin. Do you think they have what it takes to get to the Super Bowl?
I mean, I think they do if the defense stays healthy and plays as well as they have been, and they continue being pretty effective with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet running. And, I think even in, I'd say, the latter half of the season, we really haven't seen Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba do anything, super amazing like we saw early in the season. So there might be few things, there here and there, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there's 3 NFC West teams, so it's like trying to avoid any of them, but that's not possible at this point, I guess. But yeah, I think there's a good chance, kind of with the defense and how they run the ball, and so we'll see what happens.
Yep, looking forward to it. They've been pretty dominant and great to watch for me. So thoroughly enjoyed that. But we're here talking baseball. And let's talk Seattle Mariners. Before we get into the players that we will discuss, just off the bat here, how did you feel 2025 went?
Oh man, I mean, there's some memories to be made for sure. I mean, even just making it to the playoffs. Like the last time we went to the playoffs, I didn't really like digest that. It was kind of like, oh, and maybe it was a little more real because I went and I brought my daughter to the Tigers game where it was like went to like 15 innings or whatever, and there were times where I was like questioning whether we keep staying, and I was like, nope, we've gone to inning 12 and 13, we're staying. But and then I went to the one of the other playoff games against the Blue Jays, another just like one of those environments where we'll see if it happens again, but just kind of you experience those things and you realize that you're so close, and it's a pretty neat environment after being, living in this area past decade or so, and you're watching a bunch of just garbage teams with, wasting Felix Hernandez and all that stuff. So, when you're watching the team now, it's like, and you're watching Cal Raleigh and Big Dumper do kind of historic things where every game you're just like, wow, you're watching history, and it was a pretty cool season. So, can't complain, anything like that for sure.
Yeah, it was awesome to watch. I remember that night you took your daughter to the game because you're in the Discord with us above in the Blue, and you're like giving us updates. Like first you told us you were going, we were all pumped for you because there's a large Pacific Northwest contingency in that Discord, like a very large one. So a lot of people rooting for you, and then you kind of got your play-by-plays. I think more so the next morning we got your thoughts because it was a little tough to. I think the Wi-Fi wasn't quite what we a little too crowded that night in the stadium, but it sounded awesome. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk players. Let's get to it. And we're going to just start at the top with one of the just young phenoms. It's crazy to think that Julio Rodriguez is only 25 years old. He's been doing it year after year, a 30-30 season, his second in 4 years. He's gone at least 20-20 every single year, Corbin. And right now, over the last like 10 or so drafts, his ADP is around 10 or 11. I don't know why it would stop, but what are your thoughts on J Rod as we enter his 5th season in the big leagues?
Yeah, I think I was looking back last year at our notes and just talking about how last year Julio had all these injuries and kind of banged up and stuff like that, and pretty much stayed healthy and did all the things. I mean, we'll see how those kind of those approach ages, because he's definitely pretty aggressive, right? He's he kind of he just sometimes he's really swinging, and you're like, why? I think there was. It might have been one of the playoff games. I was like, why are you even swinging at that? And just like there's some free swinging, but that also comes with great tools, right? We know kind of those skills are pretty strong in terms of exit velocity and athleticism and all that stuff. So I mean, I would say, yeah, like we're talking about, he's kind of an elite fantasy asset on a team that's kind of built to win. And so yeah, I feel a little more confident this time around, and maybe it's just because he was mostly healthy after last year.
Yep. No, I fully agree. Like I was just looking right now as you're talking, his 230 seasons, over 700 plate appearances in those 2 seasons. So it's the health to your point, and yeah, the free swinging's there. His strikeout rate did go up. It actually went down this past year, but yeah, it's who he is. He's a young ball player, and the consistency is ridiculous. And you get him at the back end of round 1. The question everybody wants to know, and it's pretty tough to decide. I think we all think regression is coming, but to what extent? And that is for the big dumper himself, Cal Raleigh. A, one of the best nicknames, period. B, he backed it up literally this last season. 60 home runs, hit 247. Those are both career highs. 14 steals out of nowhere, career high. 110 runs, 125 RBIs, all career highs. Pretty simple stuff. Amazing season. His ADP is 18. So he's early second round right now. What are your thoughts on Raleigh entering this season? He'll only be 29, so he's not that old, but he put up 705 plate appearances last year.
Yeah, I mean, we knew the skills were there, right? And it just happened to kind of just line up, and everything was just amazing. And I think this is kind of, when you're looking at a breakout season, this is kind of what it looks like, right? Whenever I'm writing, it's usually just like there's a bunch of skills and there's some luck and fortune, and both of those combined, you get those massive kind of seasons. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some, regression. I mean, he's always going to be a guy that's going to have kind of better expected batting averages, because he hits the ball so dang hard. So there might be some of those kind of contact kind of rate concerns. I mean, he is kind of under that kind of scary, like kind of 70% ish contact rate percentage. So that might be an issue, but yeah, I think the main thing to monitor is just, obviously the stolen bases, right? Like, I mean, when baseball HQ has those like stolen on base opportunity rates, and it went from 5% in 2024 to 11% in 2025. And, we might think like, well, at some point that might come back to bite him if we're playing every day. And he's probably one of the toughest players where he's just going to go out there regardless of what happens. But I mean, gosh, I'm trying to think of like, if we've had a catcher go kind of like, top 25 picks like this, and what I'd have to do some research on, like, is that a good thing to pay up for that? And I think he's probably, if I double check, yeah, he's like kind of the only catcher within top 50 picks, with like William Contreras after that. So I feel like it's probably a bit rich, but I could see it if we're just banking on those massive plate appearances that we're probably not getting from any other catcher, because we know this guy's playing every day based on his defense and hitting. So
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me because I love catchers, and I don't mind taking an early catcher. But like you said, this early, I'm usually like, okay, round 3, I could think about the discussion. I prefer round 4 or 5 if I have my choices. But to your point, if he can sneak in another 650 to 700 plus plate appearances at the catcher's position, that's elite. So there's a lot that can be done there. They obviously want him to DH or catch. They want him in the lineup every day. Simple. Why wouldn't you? So like the argument is, it's a fun argument to have because I don't think there's really a wrong answer to it. It's just kind of what your belief is and how you want to build around it, especially like to your point, if he can throw in 10 plus steals, like you're not taking a 0 anymore. And that's a big differentiation. So I have not been in on the early Cal Raleigh action yet, but like the more I do my research, I'm starting like, okay, I could see a world where this fits. And that becomes interesting to me at least.
yeah, and I think if you just kind of average like, the last 2 seasons, and you're, instead of that kind of elite like 33 plus dollar player, and you're going like 20 mid 20s, like that's maybe you're maybe paying up a couple of rounds like you're saying, but If you're fine, just kind of, not everybody's gonna, break out and surpass their price, but yeah, I think it's the plate appearance thing, right? It's like, I mean, it's kind of feels like rare to have kind of a catcher that just like does everything well and trying to be in the lineup all the time. So
Yep, fully agree. Let's go Randy Arozarena, another guy that like the batting average fluctuates year to year. It's kind of just been going down for the most part. Bounced back a little bit to 238 last year, but 5 straight seasons of 2020 baseball, which is to me pretty good. And Arozarena, even though he's that good, his ADP still around 100. Like he's not climbing up the leaderboards as one would expect. Maybe they're that worried about his batting average, but I've been taking him everywhere I can. I get eventually it's going to slow down, but you could pencil in 2020. I'm pretty excited. Maybe I'm naive. What are your thoughts on Randy Arozarena this year?
yeah, basically continues to be one of the kind of most valuable players, outfitters from just that power speed standpoint, right? Just kind of 2020 potential on a regular basis. Yeah, I think you're right to hit on the batting average kind of issues with some of the contact kind of challenges, but he's kind of one of those weird players where he doesn't quite chase a ton, but he's kind of showing some patience from those swing rates, but he does kind of struggle to make contact. I think the other interesting thing is that, like a lot of the Mariners have kind of bumped up the kind of stolen base rate in the past couple of years, but he used to be really awful at kind of converting stolen bases.
Yeah.
So like you look at kind of all the caught stealing and stuff like that, and it's like this year is like 83% stolen base kind of just conversions overall after kind of being under 70%. So, I mean, that feels like maybe a little unusual when you're kind of getting older, but it could just kind of be, maybe a little, sharper, or with some of the kind of stolen base or, pickoff rules and stuff that might just be kind of almost things that might have evened out. But I think the biggest boost, and this is something that we kind of noticed kind of late in the season, but like, about through late July, he was kind of in the middle of the Mariners lineup. And then, like everyone else, we were like, why in the world is JP Crawford hitting and, lead off? And then they moved Randy Arozarena into the leadoff spot. So I think there's a boost in value right there where you're hitting, in front of Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, and Josh Naylor. And so there should be a boost in kind of runs and plate appearances there. So I think there might be kind of some sneaky value kind of based on that, assuming that continues, because I really don't see anyone else that's going to be like hitting leadoff for them unless they're going to like put Julio there or something, But if they just stick with the Randy, Julio, Raleigh, Naylor, that's like a solid top four for sure.
That's their best top four, like you said. So that was going to be one of my questions. Do they stick with that? Because I was one of many, and I wasn't even a Mariners fan going, why is JP Crawford leading off right now? But yeah, some coaches are just stubborn in their ways until it finally changes, and it changed for the better. Let's talk Josh Naylor, who you mentioned, because he came over in the trade last year from Arizona, and all Josh Naylor did was steal 30 bases. A lot of them with the Mariners is the greatest part. Hit 20 home runs. Like the power we most of us could believe. The steals, where did that come from? Hit 295, was just an absolute stud. It's just one of those, like, does he run against the question? But I'm kind of leaning on what you're obviously going to tell me. But I'm leaning that everyone's stealing, it looks like, so far in Seattle. So maybe so. But Naylor's ADP is around 70, 75. So he kind of has to steal from me at that point. What are your thoughts on Josh Naylor?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the best kind of trade deadline moves they made in a long time. When I was looking back, the Mariners have really been searching for a first baseman. We were cycling through Ty France. Can't forget a free agent, acquisition of the year last year, Donovan Solano. I mean, Rowdy Tellez, gosh, like Luke Raley. I mean, just so many great options. But watching Rowdy Tellez, I don't want to waste too much on Rowdy Tellez, but like the only thing I can remember is when he was playing first base and a runner came over and the runner ran into him and the runner was annihilated. He was standing on first base.
Brick wall.
Yeah, but yeah, you're absolutely right. 19 of the 30 stolen bases with Seattle. He was a monster in the playoffs. Like watching the playoffs. I mean, I don't know how much kind of people take on that, but he was just clutch and helping him out, and so like that kind of sticks with me. Just kind of, and we're talking about recency bias. I mean, he's always got that high floor with the strong play discipline. Even though like we might think of him as being like a real power hitter, it's kind of more average than anything. Mostly probably because he hits too many ground balls and things like that. But so I think, he's definitely one of those compilers, and probably is more in that kind of 20 home run realm. But Yeah, so 20 he had a 20%, Josh Naylor had a 20% stolen base opportunity rate. That was like double of his career average at 9%.
That'll help.
So, I don't think we can expect 20-30 to be a regular thing. I mean, based on this guy's body type, but I mean, I would love to see it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but I think something more reasonable is probably like 15 to 20 home runs, maybe 10 to 15 stolen bases is probably more reasonable. Um, Again, I this feels like a little rich, but I haven't looked at like if first base is just kind of ugly where it's like you're gonna take a guy that's in a good lineup and he can hit kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I think if we're just like again kind of regressing the past couple of seasons of like just kind of the steals and home runs and we're kind of being more reasonable. Yeah, I mean, I might not be fully into him on at that price, kind of based on this, I'm expecting the stolen base kind of opportunities up there. But I mean, I like the guy. It's hard, I like real life standpoint. I love rooting for that guy. So yeah.
Yeah, that's been my biggest problem. I've been a huge Naylor fan in recent seasons, especially at his price tag every draft year. This year, you actually have to decide, okay, is the price is right for once? Because in the past, I always thought it was an easy answer. Like if I can convince myself he's going to get 15 steals, he's probably pretty close to so this works. Because to your first base question, it's like after him you have Vinny P a little bit later, and then it's like 80 picks or so, and there's just chunks, and it starts going downhill from there. So it's an interesting. There's options as the draft goes on, but not the same, if that makes sense. So Naylor's one of kind of the last, if he could get you the power speed, one of the last top tier options for sure. So
Yeah.
definitely interesting. If he hits cleanup in that lineup, there should be a lot of RBI potential. So that is another plus as well.
Right. It kind of gets ugly as I'm just scanning. Like, I don't know if how much confidence I have in somebody putting up numbers like Josh Naylor might, kind of based on who's going behind. So it might be one of those where like you'll take the kind of dip on some of the other things based on the playing time and being in a pretty solid lineup.
Agreed. All right, let's talk Victor Robles. Had that serious injury last year he suffered in San Francisco. Then he had the drama during his rehab where he decided to throw a bat at a pitcher. Finally came back, but kind of just platooned because like he had such a great 2024 once he was traded over to Seattle. Didn't get to see it because there's only 32 games this past year. Right now, if you like Victor Robles, his ADP is around 350, so he's next to free. But what should we expect from Robles this year? Is he a full timer? Is he going to put two? Like, just what do you think's going to happen in that situation? Like, you have Canzone out there. You have options basically out there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's definitely a need to fill that kind of third outfielder spot for them. I mean, he could be kind of a cheap source of steals. I feel like there was some optimism, kind of heading into last season with him. Before kind of anything, we realized that there was maybe going to be kind of more of the postseason run because he ran pretty wild with the Mariners last year too, right? Like 30 of his 34 stolen bases in 2024. It was just all the health and all the kind of off the field stuff with him, and caused him to miss most of the season, so it was kind of a lost season there. But I mean, he's it's a cheap source of speed, but I'd be really careful with guys like this because these are the kind of guys that like you just churn because they're bottom of the third of the lineup, which that was the most frustrating thing about the Mariners during their like kind of postseason was just like the bottom third of the lineup just couldn't do anything, right? And so if he's in there, it might be kind of ugly, but it might be kind of a cheap speed option. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a between when this is published and when the season starts, if there's not another move to kind of add kind of a corner infielder kind of corner outfielder for this team and just kind of see what happens with that. But yeah, I'm not super confident in it. Yeah.
Not dealing Dipoto. We couldn't see him doing that anytime soon. Not at all. Before we go back to JP, I want to ask you about Donovan Canzone while we are sitting in the outfield because I was thoroughly impressed what we saw from Canzone in his 268 plate appearances. He hit 300, 11 homers, really good versus righties. Didn't get a ton of chances versus left-handed pitching. ADP's 336. He seems to be a starting outfielder, platoon most likely, but starting outfielder. Where are you at on Dominic Canzone, who still a youngster, maybe still getting his feet wet at the big league level?
Yeah. This is a guy, like, I don't know how many teams have a player where it's a platoon bat, and anytime this guy comes to plate, there's a hand motion for this guy. It's that like chef's kiss hand motion, and it's
That is
just like,
awesome.
man, like, but that aside, he's clearly a fan favorite. Like you're saying, I think the skills are strong. I think that's why people kind of buy into him. He's got those kind of above average contact rates, and he hits the ball hard. It's just kind of a matter of consistency and regular playing time. At best he's a strong side platoon option. But it's again, it's one of those where he might, you might be rolling him in your lineup and he might be hot, but if it's not, then it's kind of one of those like just kind of wasted, empty profiles unless he's rolling. So I think the skills are there. I wouldn't be comfortable with the Mariners rolling, him throughout the whole season, but he's gonna have his chances for sure because he's kind of just, he's been solid when he's been in there from a real life standpoint, I'd say.
Sweet. All right, let's go to the man, JP Crawford. It's a real life profile. It's gonna be 31. He's kind of an infield leader, defensive leader, team leader type. He had 12 homers last year, second best of his career. 8 steals at 265. JP Crawford is cheap in drafts, 378. It's like desperation mode. Where are you at on JP Crawford this year? Because I know you're really happy if he's at the bottom of the order.
Yeah, another guy that's just like, fan favorite, right? He does a lot of the good real life stuff. I feel like I'd have to check him, it's like we could argue about defensive numbers, but there are times where on defense, like he wasn't, he was making some kind of unfortunate plays, but from real life standpoint, he's generally kind of been better than kind of that fantasy. Yeah. So like his defensive WAR kind of really dipped down last year, kind of aligning with that. If I recall when he had kind of that breakout home run season in 2023, when he hit 19 home runs, yeah, he's pulling the ball career high rate. So he's, pulling the ball 43% of the time in 2023. And that kind of dipped back down to like 34% over the past few seasons. So, that could be something that he might be kind of working on if we want to get back to the power. But yeah, he's just definitely kind of one of those replaceable guys. But he does kind of eat up plate appearance when he's healthy, right? Like you look at the past kind of 5 seasons or so, it's over 600 plate appearances. It might only earn him maybe like $5 or $6 of any value of anything, but so that could be kind of replaceable. But I could see it being one of those where like it just kind of, draft champions are kind of those ease where, he's going to pretty much play every day. We'll talk later. There might be some guys coming up that might be,
Yes.
stealing some spots, but I mean, he's going to hit bottom third. So you're going to kind of get a plate appearance kind of dip overall. Cause for the most part before he was hitting lead off or top of the order. So that's something to kind of pay attention to. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of reflected in the, some of the projections are kind of, dipping him back down of what he had last year. So just kind of note that, but nothing special. I wouldn't be excited to have him on my roster.
Yeah, like you said, the only place he appeals to me is like a draft champions format as like my third shortstop or whatever. When I need the depth piece that God forbid something happens to the first 2 guys, here comes JP Crawford type situation. That's where he fits in. There might be weeks where you stream him in season just based on certain things because we have seen him get hot from time to time. Like it'll happen out of nowhere, but yeah, as a whole, not overly thrilled. Any other bats? I didn't put any on here because none of them really appealed to me, but maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, no, those are the only ones I had in my notes that are worth talking about.
All right, let's head to the mound. And man, we're going to start right at the top with the guy that Ryan and I fight about all the time because Ryan loves Brian. Woo! I still can't get the almost like 2 Tommy John surgeries in 1 season out of my brain, but he was amazing last year. Brian was simply amazing. 168 and 2/3 innings and 30 starts. Like it's hard to ignore just how good he was. ADP's 39 though. That arm better be healthy at ADP 39. That's where Ryan and I still argue about him. Where are you at on Brian Wooks? Like I'm not going to deny the talent. His college ball was an hour south of me. It was great. But what are your thoughts on Woo?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like his arm was going to fall off in 2024. And then he basically led the Mariners in innings ahead of Luis Castillo. Yeah. So the guy that we were most concerned about health stayed the most healthy. Then Logan Gilbert got hurt, George Kirby got hurt, Bryce Miller, and he was the last person standing around. But yeah, he ended the season with a pec injury. mid-September. He wasn't on the American League division kind of roster. He pitched in relief in the ALCS, but he wasn't sharp. I mean, he came in and we were like, oh, great, but he wasn't looking very great. So I think I'd kind of pay attention to see kind of where he's at with that. But yeah, this is hard because I feel like in the past he's always kind of maybe been in that ADP 100 range ish, but now we're going like top 50 picks. Oh gosh, just feels like, I don't want to say like not this level, but I would be worried about kind of like, I think it's going to be a per inning kind of guy, and I don't know if I'd expect another kind of heavy workload from Brian Wu in 2026. I mean, I would love to see that, but unless there's some way that he keeps kind of keeping his arm healthy, even though it's almost fallen off, then it's fine. But I mean, he has the skills you're looking for, right? Like and I think it's worth, the upside is he's a whip asset, right? He's always been kind of 0.9 or better, or basically under 1. He limits hits. He's really great strong control guy, near elite, above average and kind of missing bats, over 13% swinging strike rate. So he has kind of meets those criteria, right? He's got the control, he's got the whiffs. It's just about kind of finishing the season injured and kind of paying attention to that. There used to be this narrative around Brian Wu about kind of really struggling with kind of lefties and stuff like that, but he has been throwing more changeups, and he's a command artist, right? I feel like he's kind of one of those guys where like you're just gonna out command you, and he's just super awesome. So I mean, he showed he can handle the heavy workload. I still think there's some risk, but at the end of the day, and I think we talked about this in the past, is like I'm going to, and this could be wrong because it went real bad last year with injuries, but I'm going to trust the kind of Mariners in terms of pitching and their system. And, if it bites me with Brian Wu, I'm going to be taking some Kirby's and Gilberts or whatever to kind of just like take a couple of shots of this rotation, because I think we want a piece of this rotation in some regard. So I'd be a little cautious at that price, but it could just be one of after some of the injury research, I'm not too keen on guys that like ended the season injured, and already had some issues before. So I'd be a little cautious about some of that stuff.
And that's my thing, is like I'm just like really cautious, but then at the same time, like you did it right there, Ryan's on it. I don't disagree with any of the facts you mentioned about how good he is and the assets he can bring in. Maybe he just pitches through these things and he's going to be a beast again, and I'm going to be an idiot looking at like this ace going away. It's just one of those deals. I have to just plant my flag, I guess, and live with it, which I have no problem being wrong on things. But it's just very tough because I see how good Brian Wu is. I'm not talking like an SP3 here. This is an ace that if he's healthy or at least pitches the whole year, he's worth it. But at the same time, you have to pay the ace price. If he gets hurt, ouch. That's not great, but yeah, it's just pick you got to plant your flag, pick your side, and then go with it, because, like you said, it's a total. It could go either way easily, and risk reward in a big way. Logan Gilbert, who you mentioned, got injured last year after throwing 208 innings the year before, 131 innings last year, but still was very good when on the mound. Strikeouts were even higher than usual for Logan Gilbert. I still am a Logan Gilbert fan, of course, and he's going one pick in front of Brian Wu at 38 right now. So they're going back-to-back in drafts over the last 10 drafts. What are we thinking on Logan Gilbert? Like I said, injury-riddled season, little step back in production, but the production was still very good.
Yeah. If I was just kind of, on the clock and picking between these two, I'd probably go Logan Gilbert. Had an elbow injury in late April, kind of caused him to miss 2 months, but was finishing the season healthy and really, again, checks those boxes of the ace. He's got the, career best swinging strike rate last year. He's got that deep arsenal, good enough control, several above average pitches, kind of that elite extension. The only kind of random note I looked at to, besides just being like, he's damn good, is that he threw his splitter kind of 2 miles per hour slower last year. And it was like kind of dropped about 4 more inches. And we saw that kind of swinging strike rate on the splitter go from 21.6% in 2024 to 28.6%. So a 7 percentage point jump in the splitter with the slower, velocity and dropping more. So that kind of all aligns there. So, again, if I was picking between Wu and Gilbert, I'd lean Gilbert.
That's what I've been doing. I've been on the Gilbert train the whole time, but again, both very, very good. George Kirby, injuries last year, production fell off a ton. He had his moments though where things looked good, but overall it was a down season for George Kirby with the injuries, and the ratios, which you usually love, fell a bit. But indicators said he should still be better, and sharp drafters are still taking him early, like pick 62. So he's like around the end of round 4. So it's not like they're just saying, "Oh, it's a bad year, he's falling apart." No, people are still believing in George Kirby. Are you believing in George Kirby for 2026?
Yeah, he's an interesting one here, right? So another guy who was durable got injured, shoulder inflammation in March, and kind of was delayed until May. I think the one interesting note, and this is something where I haven't quite got a whole lot of information, and I'm kind of just going with like something that kind of theoretically makes sense, is that with the shoulder injury, his arm angle kind of was down 8 degrees in 2025, when it usually was like around 36 degrees. It was under 30. And so we saw the kind of vertical release point kind of go down. And then just kind of his horizontal release point, it goes a little farther away from the midline. And so that kind of helps with the like lower arm angle. So, part of me is like, oh, maybe shoulder injury. Like I'm thinking like, maybe that was part of that or something. But, couple notable pitch movement things, kind of sweep or slider kind of was sweeping a little more horizontal movement with that lower arm angle, which kind of makes sense. And similar things with other pitches. So part of me was like, maybe the shoulder injury kind of causes kind of those kind of control issues that used to be really elite, and kind of the, being a little more hittable, but those could be kind of a tiny bit, fluky a little bit. So I think there's definitely the potential for kind of a bounce back at that discounted price, because I feel like it used to be more where kind of Gilbert and Wu are right now. So maybe there's a kind of a tiny bit discount, but I like him at the price regardless. But he's kind of one of those guys that you kind of have to realize that he might be kind of a ratio asset, but he might not give you kind of the overall volume of strikeouts for a guy. So
yeah, he was an accumulator for a while, so if he's gonna have to tone it down a little bit, that could definitely affect things a tad bit. Let's talk Bryce Miller. Stop me if you heard this. Another injury riddle season, like you said, with the Seattle Mariners pitching staff. Miller only threw 90 innings after throwing 180 in 2024. He saw the strikeouts go down. He saw the ratios go through the roof. It was rough watching him pitch. There wasn't a lot of confidence when Bryce Miller took the mound last year. ADP's 254 though. Like if we believe he can start finding things again, that's a very affordable price, Corbin.
Yeah. This guy was on the injured list a ton. Right elbow inflammation in middle of May, back to the IL after coming back for 2 weeks with the same injury in June, and then returning in August. Another guy like Kirby, where kind of the arm angle dipped a little bit, and just again some of the horizontal and vertical release points changing a tiny bit. Again, one of my guesses is like, well, maybe that was a little more comfortable with kind of some of those elbow injuries. I will say when I saw him pitch in the postseason in game 1, I was a little worried because I was like, we're putting on our worst starting pitcher for game 1 of the ALCS. And it went okay. Could have been worse. I think one thing I noted when I was researching, because I must have forgot this kind of after playoffs are done, but he had one of the platelet-rich plasma injections kind of in the hurt pitching elbow. And there was a note that there's a bone spur. And so like, it looks like, based on my super smart Google research, it looks like those plasma injections, that I went to school for are supposed to help with healing and relieving pain with inflammation. But when they say a bone spur, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something, maybe there's kind of a surgery to remove that. I mean, I didn't do a whole ton of research on like, well, how many pitchers pitch with bone spurs, but that seems a tiny bit concerning. But yeah, gosh, he's such a weird pitcher. I used to really like him kind of based on some of the pitch metrics and stuff like that, but some of the skills have kind of not been so enticing. But it's one of those where it's it's so much later than we're used to. I may take a chance, but knowing that it could be pretty rocky.
Yeah, because at least at 254, if it goes wrong, he's an easy drop. You don't have to worry about it. Like, it is what it is. But like the postseason start was good. Maybe the injection helps a ton. I think a lot of guys, it feels like, just back in my brain, that they do get the bone spur removed via surgery at some point. But maybe with this new technology, they can just do other things. Who knows? But at his price point, I could see a world where taking a chance could pay off. I have not yet, but I could see where that is an option. The fifth starter in this rotation, which even with all the injuries last year, the Mariners had the same stud fives coming back, which is pretty impressive. Luis Castillo, the veteran, the father, the grandfather of the group, is coming back for his age 33 season, and he is just as steadily boring as they come. But it's like very, very good stuff from Luis Castillo. His ADP is 157. Like the innings, the ratios, the strikeouts, it's just you can almost write it down, and you're going to be pretty close by the end of the season. So, where are we at on Castillo as he again enters his age 33 season?
Yeah, he continues to be a pretty durable arm, kind of discounted for kind of what most of the prices indicate. 408 xERA is kind of the worst of his career, but if we could get an ERA on 4, it's not the worst thing in the world. Kind of that price, kind of based on the volume and some of the strikeout skills. Yeah, he definitely doesn't have kind of the dominant stuff like he used to in the past. Still some above average skills. We've seen kind of the skills decline across the board. So I think there's some concern. I think it's hard to find volume probably at this ADP, kind of, regardless if some of the skills have taken a slight step back. So I'd take a chance on kind of a pitcher with this track record with some decent skills, for looking around pick 150 or so. I mean, kind of based on that volume projection.
Yeah, I'm becoming quite the fan of him just as I look at the other pitchers in that pool, like in that area. Just the consistency he brings. Like, there's probably some higher upside arms there if you want to go that way, but just that kind of steady, consistent. I'm starting to embrace that a little more as draft season, and I guess as I get older as well. Let's head to the bullpen to one of the best closers in baseball, and Andres Munoz picked up 38 saves last year in 62 innings. It was the first season, it feels like, where it was 100% his job. He kind of got yo-yoed in previous season. He got it. He took the ball. He ran with it. Absolute monster season. ADP is 33 right now. He's like the third or fourth reliever off the board. Relievers are pushed super high right now, Corbin. It's just a weird world. But what are your thoughts on Munoz entering this year? It should just be his ball once again, it seems like.
Yeah, pretty elite season, accounting for 88% of the team saves. I felt like even just kind of watching how they deployed the rest of the bullpen, they had a pretty kind of consistent, just like he's always there. There's no messing around. Maybe he might have came in, maybe in the eighth or, with 1 or 2 outs if there was just some crucial situation kind of thing. But yeah, he's the guy. I mean, I don't really think that they're going to kind of mess around with the kind of save opportunities there. So yeah, I feel like I'm pretty confident in, kind of even at this price. I know this is kind of just where the, price for closers are, but, I think the slider got even nastier last year. So I really like the price, and kind of just, we're looking for a pretty secure closer for sure.
In the unforeseen event that Munoz, something happens, let's put it that way. We don't want this to happen, but if it does, we're looking at Matt Brash, or we're looking for the new Jose Ferrer who was picked up.
Yeah, I mean, Brasher's clearly the guy towards the end of the season. Whenever we return, is kind of the 8th inning guy. He has a kind of prototypical, kind of high stuff, poor control guy. So I think his kind of pitches kind of evolve late in the season. And a guy that, he can be pretty shaker, but he's got closer stuff. First glance, Jose Ferrer is definitely a guy that, I was surprised when kind of Mariners move Harry Ford, and maybe it's just mostly name value and stuff like that. But, I kind of remembered when this trade kind of went down to get Jose Ferrer, I was a little kind of like, what? But, I remember talking to kind of Chris Clegg a tiny bit, and then I was like just kind of like looking at their bullpen, and I was like, the Mariners really don't have any lefty relievers, right? They have Gabe Spire, and so I think Ferrer's kind of, they really lack kind of a lefty reliever in their bullpen. It kind of fits the mold what they're looking for, just kind of this hard throwing guy with a nasty changeup, sinker slider from that lower arm angle. So I think he could mix in there, kind of maybe fight for kind of that 8th inning role with Brash, but he's got the skills. So Ferrer might be more of kind of that kind of draft champions pick if things just went wrong and Munoz missed time. I think Brash definitely has the leg up, just kind of safe chances. But Ferrer might be a guy that's definitely kind of worth stashing, kind of based on those skills and kind of based on the need for a kind of lefty reliever that might need to be kind of relied more upon in the kind of the latter half of the game for sure.
Perfect, good to know. All right, let's talk prospects. I have a hunch I know who you're talking about when it might be a shortstop or maybe even third base replacement at some point. What prospects could we potentially be seeing this year?
Yeah, I mean, Colt Emerson's definitely the top name to know, right? I mean, he's already kind of been rumored to be by some of the kind of Seattle sports kind of beat reporters that there's a chance he could earn a chance on an open day roster. There's clearly a need at third base, right? We can't go to enter the season with Ben Williamson as our third baseman, or that'd be a little worrisome without Eugenio Suarez unless he gets brought back or something to kind of clog it up. The kind of Mariners kind of single A team is around where we're at, and we kind of watched kind of the Aqua Sox play and saw Emerson in person. I mean, they've got quite a few guys that they've moved up pretty quickly to kind of when they're in single A to double A, and Colt Emerson was a tiny bit 27 later for instance triple A. So I mean, brief sample of triple A, 93.6 mile per hour average exit velocity there, but yeah, he's the guy that I think can really push for some infield reps. I think he's, mainly a shortstop, but wouldn't be surprised if they try to work in him at third base to get him some reps. Like I said earlier, the bottom third of this lineup is pretty concerning. And so, if we're looking at all these other teams, and I know the Mariners aren't like this, but the other teams are paying for bats and bats and bats. And so, not that we need to do that, but, if we're going to just hang out and hope that the bottom of the third just magically gets better, I mean, we're gonna need to do that with some of the prospects at some point. So Colt Emerson's one guy for sure. Let me talk about a few other guys.
Yep, go for it. Who else you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think another guy that was on the Aqua Sox team, Michael Arroyo, he might be a little later, but he's more of kind of a second baseman option. He's definitely got the ability to hit. There was some talks about him maybe taking some outfield reps to get some positional flexibility and stuff like that, which, like I mentioned earlier with the Victor Robles thing or the Canzone, there's definitely a need at kind of the third outfield spot. He's got some power and speed, so just kind of some guy to maybe monitor, kind of mid-season waiver wire guy. I don't know if he's going to get there, but Lazaro Montes is another kind of just guy to just drool over. This guy's 6'5", 210 pounds, it's got a bunch of raw power, kind of pull heavy fly ball approach. I think the hit tools are going to be the biggest concern. So he might be like a big strikeout guy. But contact and in terms of hard hit stuff is allowed for sure. So those are the three guys: Colt Emerson, Michael Arroyo, Lazaro Montes, in terms of kind of, more impactful, maybe within the range of, being on the roster at some point this year.
Yeah, I would love to see Montes there. I'm kind of, I think it's a late season, or if anything, this year, just because I don't know, when he made that jump last year, it slowed down, but I'm with you. Like, I think it could happen, and if it does, oh my goodness, is the way I look at it. It's going to be awesome. So I'm hoping that happens. Emerson's the one that, yeah, if they don't bring a third baseman in, like, he needs to be starting at third base. Just like it just needs to be the case.
Yeah.
But time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Last question I have for you: what are your expectations for the 2026 season?
I mean, pretty high after last year, right? I think, I like that they re-signed Naylor. But again, top half of the lineup looks great. I like that a lot. Pitching is pretty stable. I think it's the biggest questions are going to be how consistent can we get the bottom third of the lineup. But I do like the way the rotation's setting up. as just kind of a jaded Mariners fan, sometimes I'm always worried about the Astros, just kind of how it goes. The Rangers kind of, come up here and there, but I've got some pretty high expectations for them. I think playoffs are kind of like something we're expecting based on kind of last year, but we'll see kind of what other moves they make. I do like some of the moves they've made kind of at trade deadline where they're not kind of just like totally just giving up a ton of stuff to get what they need. But I mean, they haven't been making as many moves, but I like the Ferrer move. I think, just the Naylor thing is kind of what they need. So we'll see if we can, Emerson takes a spot in the bottom third, or they add kind of a third baseman or second baseman to kind of give a little bit of depth, because that was something we talked about last year too, just the lack of depth. Like, I don't really want Leo Rivas or, no offense, but Rob Refsnyder or Luke Raley really being guys that we're relying on. So that's, the depth is definitely the concern in this lineup.
Yeah, that's what when I look at their roster, I'm like, man, starting line is pretty good. Don't get hurt. Because it's a little bleak down there for sure, but there's still plenty of time. It's mid-January. If anybody's going to be active on the phones to make moves, it's Dipoto. So you're going to be just fine up there. But all right, before we head out of here, remind everybody where they can find you and what you got going on these days.
Yeah, you can find me on X, Twitter, Corbin_Young21. I've got my first kind of Facts and Flukes article at Baseball HQ coming out this weekend, kind of kicking off the, off-season rotation here. So by the time this podcast comes out, there should be one kind of on the site. I'm kind of doing a tiny bit with Rotoballer here and there, as really, as we all switch kind of our brains here to kind of baseball here. But yeah, that's mostly where the work's happening. And yeah, thanks for having me on, and always good chatting Mariners and baseball in general.
Yeah, always great chatting with you, man. I'm glad we got to do this again this year, and I'm rooting for you. A, because it means my co-host is always happy, and B, it's just the Mariners are a fun team, man. They're a really fun team, and like you said, just from the TV, the atmosphere there was awesome. So I'd love to see some more of that in the Pacific Northwest. I'm pretty sure you would as well. So we'll be rooting for you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, make sure you follow Corbin on Twitter, and until next time, this was Benched with Bubba, episode 816. Your 2026 Seattle Mariners team preview. Catch you all next time.